You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers your first listen and watch each and every day. It's a special Crossover Thursday, a playoff edition of Crossover Thursday, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Louis DiBiase, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers. Two of, 15 to 16 Locked On hosts remaining. The rest are on the golf course, and that's more in the form of the squad show, if you will, on Tuesdays. So, Peter, this is a fun game on Sunday at 4:30, a rematch of Week 1, 34-29, a close game in Brazil. But I think both teams, and I think it's obvious to say this, but both are very different from that first game, similar in some ways as well. For you, what would you say is like the main difference for Green Bay? Like, I do think it's night and day, at least from an Eagles perspective, about who they are now compared to that game.
I actually think it's the same answer for both teams, and that's the defense. The defense is playing for both of these teams at just a different level. And I think for the Eagles, that starts with the assimilation of Cooper DeJean into what they do defensively. It's the Vic Fangio defense takes time to incorporate. And really what we've seen over the last couple of years is, if you don't have Vic Fangio, like, don't try and run the Vic Fangio defense.
That's what the Eagles tried to do for 2 years.
But if you have Vic Fangio, it turns out it's really good. Like, and if you have the horses, right? And Philadelphia has the horses. What Green Bay has done here, there are 3 teams, Lou, that are top 10 in DVOA in offense and defense. The Packers, the Ravens, and the Lions. The Eagles are just outside because they're 13th in offense. So they're just outside of that range.
And that's the passing game that impacts
and that's not to say that the Eagles aren't a really good team, right? But I think it's more to say, especially to your Eagles listeners that may not be like in the weeds with Packer stats, and I don't blame them for that. This is a really good defense. And that has been a big difference. Like, you see Philadelphia kind of torch them for stretches of that game. But a lot of the things that were happening in that game, the turnovers, the coverage disguises, the things that they were able to do against Jalen Hurts to contain, they've been really good against rushing quarterbacks all year. And it started in Week 1. They sort of put down their markers. They said, look, we're not going to let running quarterbacks beat us. We're going to be, I had Evan Williams, Packers rookie, on my show a couple weeks ago. He said, we want to be the best disguised team in the league. And the Eagles are also one of the best disguised teams in the league. In fact, one of the most disguised teams in the league. So to me, that's the biggest difference. And I feel like I went back and watched that game yesterday because I wanted to look at a couple different things. And I was like, oh man, like this Philly defense is just, they're so much more connected now than they were in that game.
No, I completely agree. And of course, like a first game under a new defensive coordinator, things are going to be sloppy, especially we all remember the field conditions in Brazil.
I mean,
but at the same time,
yeah,
it was brutal. But the tackling was awful from Philly's perspective. I think the other key matchup, you already mentioned it, Cooper DeJean's in the slot now, and that was not the case Week 1. It was Avonte Maddox and Jayden Reed. I thought overall the Eagles secondary actually had a good day. Quinyon Mitchell had as good of a rookie debut as I can remember, and Darius Slay held his own too, but Avonte Maddox against Jayden Reed, like that was the matchup that completely torched them. And they also couldn't stop Josh Jacobs. So suddenly, though, the Eagles after the bye week became the number 1 defense statistically in almost every single category. So Fangio totally turned things around. But Peter, I was going to ask you that because I noticed, I did look up a lot of the Packers numbers, and it's impressive on both sides of the ball. And sometimes numbers lie. So, from a guy that of course covers them every week, I was wondering like if the numbers really do back up what the tape says about Green Bay since that game. Because again, Week 1 is, we all know how weird it can be in the NFL, especially, you're traveling to South America. It's hard to totally read a lot into that matchup.
Just think about what you just said. Like, you're traveling to South America
exactly.
For an NFL game. Like, it's actually crazy what they were able to do. And by the way, they played a really entertaining game in Week 1.
It was a great game.
It was a really fun game.
Yeah, 63 combined points. Yeah.
And we saw the stars be the stars, right? Like, that's what you want in a game like that.
Yeah.
But I would say if you ask Packer fans, they'll say no. Because what we've seen over the course of the season in the biggest games is in Week 1, the Packers defense needed 1 stop to give their offense a chance to go win the game. They couldn't get the 1 stop. Against the Vikings in Week 4, Jordan Love coming back from the injury he suffered against Philadelphia at the end of that game. They needed 1 stop to give the offense a chance to go win the game. They couldn't get it. against the Detroit Lions in the second game. They needed one stop to just hold on to that game. They couldn't get it. And then again, against the Vikings, they needed one stop late in the game to give the offense a chance to go win it. They couldn't get it. And then, of course, I mean, I don't know what to make of Week 18 against the Bears. Just a gobsmacking performance in a lot of ways. I don't think they knew if they wanted to actually try and win that game or not, and they kind of got stuck in between. And they needed one stop at the end to win that game, and they couldn't get it. That being said, down to down, play to play, this has been one of the most consistent defenses in the NFL. They do a much better job stopping the run. They've been a top 10 run defense all year. I'm interested to see how they want to play this.
Let's go battle. Yeah.
Let me throw this number at you, Lou. Saquon Barkley had the most light box touches of any player against the Packers this season. 16 rushes against light boxes for Green Bay, averaged over 92 yards on those 16 rushes. But that's right at his season average, 5.8 yards per carry. So it's like, if you're the Packers, might you take that? If you could eliminate, like go back to week 1, if you can eliminate the pass that scored a touchdown on the long run and just make him be the guy that gets 6 yards a carry, I think the Packers will take that.
I am curious how they're going to defend the Eagles offense, because you'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't because you were looking it up, but a lot of people would say, for Saquon Barkley, he's probably facing 8+ guys in the box every single play, right? And a lot of the times, like, defenses can't commit to it because, I mean, of course, Jalen Hurts kind of makes it a 12-on-10 matchup when he's healthy and can run, but then you're giving maybe the best man-beating receiver in the league, A.J. Brown, a lot of man single coverage at times, and same with Devontae Smith. So it's kind of a pick your poison, and I am curious how Green Bay will defend it if they're saying we can live with the run game, they're going to beat us, so we'll let that kind of be and focus on Brown and Smith. Because that first game, like, the Eagles have totally switched since Green Bay. Like, they are a run-dominant, run-heavy team. But that game, they were balanced. Like, Saquon carried the ball 24 times, but Jalen Hurts also threw it for over 30 times and attempts, and he's only done that a few times since then. So I am very curious what Green Bay's game plan is on defense.
And so am I. I would guess they will take a similar tact. That would just be my educated guess, having watched them all year. They have been worried about big plays, and as a result, this is, by EPA per play, by EPA per attempt, I believe, the best deep ball defense in the league. In fact, the 2 best deep ball defenses in the league, according to Next Gen Stats, are playing in Philly on Sunday.
Yeah, I was going to say the Eagles too. Yeah.
This is going to be a tough game for either team to create explosives in the passing game. But at the same time, the Packers have found a way to balance that. And I can't really tell you how much of that is just like Jeff Hafley kind of having a good feel for when teams want to run the ball, or what, because as a 2-high team, they don't defend the run particularly well. But against a single high team, they defend the run really well. So part of that too, and you mentioned the differences between week 1. I think that's crucial here. Edgerrin Cooper played 11 snaps, I believe, in week 1.
Yeah.
He's an every down player now. And he popped in that first game. The last month, he is a star.
He's my favorite linebacker in the draft, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
He has been unbelievable. And like, he was hurt for a couple weeks and came back, and immediately it was like something had just flipped. The light had turned on, and he is making plays constantly. And I think he's going to be crucial in this game for 2 reasons, Lou. The Packers are going to try and fit the run from light boxes.
Yeah.
That's just going to be a thing that happens. So that means Quay Walker, if he plays and he practiced on Wednesday, they're optimistic he can go Sunday. And Edgerrin Cooper have to. They are gap jumpers. They want to make plays. And so they will jump out of their gaps. They will shoot gaps to try and make those plays. Matt LaFleur mentioned this on Wednesday. That's really dangerous against Saquon Barkley, because if you get out of your gap and this Eagles offensive line, they will bury you. And so you're going to have to be more fundamentally sound. But then the other piece of this is the spy element. Edgerrin Cooper as a spy, it was the best thing he did in college. Is he kept an eye on the quarterback. Like, he was a terrific pass rusher, but as a spy, he would get sacks as a spy, dude, because like
he's got the range.
He's like, and I'm talking about against Jalen Milroe. he'll like roll out, and I'll never forget the play that I watched Edgerrin Cooper make. Milroe rolls to his right, something Jalen Hurts loves to do, and Edgerrin Cooper, like a shot out of a cannon, goes and takes him down for a sack in the backfield. Those are the plays that he can make. And I'm really excited to see how they try to deploy him against this Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts has the highest scramble rate in the entire NFL. So a lot of the times he's going to take off and run. That's a strength-on-strength battle for sure. And that's why I think the Eagles, too, like, they have to have success with Jalen Hurts inside the pocket. I thought he had a lot of success in that first game outside of the turnovers. Of course, like a bad pick in the red zone and in his own end zone, but 278 passing yards, 2 scores as well. There's going to be times where they have to throw the football, I think, early and often as well, too, inside the pocket, and they've got to win like that, too. I mean, of course, you're not going to abandon the run with Saquon Barkley, but I think they do need to be balanced like they were in that first game. There's so many storylines for this game. It's a great one. Eagles-Packers Sunday at 4:30. We'll continue to get into it right here on Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers. This crossover edition of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, of course. Games of the Link for the Philadelphia Eagles, but also concerts, theater, comedy, and more. One of my favorite memories of all time was getting tickets through Game Time for the 2022-2023 NFC Championship game between the Eagles and the 49ers. Now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluffs to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets for an upcoming playoff game using the Game Time app. With Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view of my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles, Locked On Packers. Louis DiBiase joined by Peter Bukowski. Eagles-Packers this Sunday at 4:30, and it's a rematch of the Week 1 barn burner in Brazil. 34-29 was the final. The Eagles did take that one. But, yeah, as we were talking about, Peter, both teams very different. One thing that's the same, though, I think, for the Eagles is all the pressure is kind of on their shoulders, right? And I feel like the Eagles this year compared to like the Super Bowl run of 2017, 2022 even to a degree, although some of the core pieces were still here on offense, a lot of them. On defense, it's a brand new, young unit. The window's more open than it's been in years past, but at the same time, it's like things in the NFL change so fast. And the Packers are a tough draw in the first round. Like I don't want to say suddenly Nick Sirianni's going to be on the hot seat if they lose this one, but it's been such a special year. I just don't think they can afford a loss. Again, the window's bigger, but things change, and I think there is definitely more pressure on Philly than Green Bay.
Are we sure Nick Sirianni is not on the hot seat if they lose in round 1?
I was going to say when I said that, I was kind of hesitating a little bit. It depends on how the game goes. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, but that's why I think there's definitely pressure, because then I feel like some narrative could form. I wouldn't subscribe to it, but I could totally see this where if they lose this game, you're going to see the talking heads say Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, they've only got out of the first round once in 4 years, and so I'm not saying this is win or
and they did go to the
out.
Super Bowl and go toe to toe.
Yeah, exactly.
Home, so like that
one of the greatest quarterbacks ever.
It should count a little bit,
which is
right?
why I would not subscribe to that.
Right.
But I do think again, Peter, there is more pressure on Philly. That sounds obvious, but I think it stands true.
It is in conjunction with what happened last year, the way last season ended. And then I think the fact, and I would say there's a ton of pressure on Jalen Hurts specifically. And we should get into just understanding what you think the impact of not playing for 2 games and 3 weeks and all the potential rust there. But I was looking it up, Lou. Since week 10, Jalen Hurts does not have a big time throw according to Pro Football Focus. 2 turnover worthy plays, not 1 big time throw. So it's like you're paying this guy $50 million a year. Saquon Barkley, you mentioned it, has become the head of the snake for this offense. You have AJ Brown, who is intermittently happy with what's going on with the offense. You have Devontae Smith. You have the best offensive line in the league. This should be the Ravens offense. This should be the Lions offense. And it's just not. And so to me, it seems like there's a lot of pressure on Jalen Hurts here. What's going on there? What can you tell us about the latest with the concussion situation and what you think the risk of rust is here? Because I don't think that's something you can just hand wave.
No, I agree. And I think there's definitely going to be some rust to knock off early on in this game. Jalen Hurts, by the way, did practice today fully, so he is going to be good to go for this matchup on Sunday.
I hate to interrupt you, but I saw the reporting was he was a limited participant in practice.
Or limited, I should say, but he was cleared to practice. For me, though, I go back to 2022. Jalen Hurts suffered a injury where he missed 2 games again. Gardner Minshew started against the Cowboys and the Saints. He didn't play. He had to come back for that Week 18 game, saw the rust, but then had a great game against the Giants after another bye week. So I don't know if he's going to, I don't know if rust is going to be something that really holds him back a whole lot in this matchup. But yeah, I think there's definitely pressure on him. I would defend him a little bit. I do think, there were some inconsistencies in the passing game this year, but I also do think they recognize that they have a historic running game, and they were just going to buy totally in on that because there were games that Jalen Hurts had to take over, and he did. That game against the Bengals, a shootout against Joe Burrow, thought he looked exceptional in the passing game. That Pittsburgh game, I really do think instilled a lot of confidence in me that if they have to win because of the passing game, they can do it. That's a good Steelers defense that Jalen Hurts passed all over, especially early in the game. So I agree with you.
And that game, a 13-play, 7-minute drive or something crazy.
Yes, and it ended the fourth quarter. So, and look, I think there's an acceptance that you have to have to a degree with Jalen. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the most consistent pocket passers in football that, constantly is winning because of the passing game. I think it's a lot to do with he's going to get explosive plays, he's going to take care of the football, and he's going to run, and your running back's going to run. You're going to have success that way. So I think that's the way they understand now who they are. I think for a while they were trying to be something they're not. And I do think that that's kind of helped them turn things around, is just kind of owning who they are. So there's pressure on him if he just lays an egg. Yeah. But I don't know if they'll even let it get to that point.
It takes a lot of self-awareness organizationally. And this is a credit to Nick Sirianni.
And to Jalen too. I think he deserves some credit for that. Some self-awareness to be Robin and to Saquon's Batman.
To say, look, this is what we're good at. And by the way, Philadelphia's season took off when Jalen Hurts first started playing because they realized, let's not throw the ball over the yard. Let's try and run the ball. And we're actually a really good running team. That was pre-Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
But hey, lean into the best ability that your quarterback has, which is as a runner, and lean into this elite offensive line. And I think that's the thing, if you're a Packers fan, you're probably most concerned about is this Packers pass rush has done very little one-on-one to win. They need to blitz to create pressure, and they did not blitz Jalen Hurts the first time. Now, Jalen Hurts, when he was pressured, was not particularly good, but they didn't do it a lot. They weren't able to get a lot of pressure. And I don't know if the Packers, this is the interesting part of the cat and mouse game to me. I kind of don't know if they care. Like Jeff Hafley was clear. They were mush rushing Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts. And it was about contain, and it worked. 11 carries for 33 yards for Jalen Hurts in that first game. Now, I can't remember off top. Did that include Neil Downs? I don't remember. But either way, it was still a really good performance. Even if it's 8 for 33, that's still a good defensive performance against Jalen Hurts. So I wonder about that. We have to talk about the defense because you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell, who, by the way, I thought should have been a Pro Bowl player. They've been getting all-pro caliber linebacker play from Zach Bond. Like, I don't understand it. Like, what
all-pro and linebacker in Philadelphia is not two words we're used to being together. By the way.
And just like retread linebacker turns into all-pro. Like, they're used to the retread turning into another retread, turning into another retread, turning into another retread, because that's what they've just cycled through here. But what is really clicked for this team defensively? Because early in the season, like the Falcons, 385 yards, the Bucks, 33 points, and they cruise past 400 yards. That's in the first month of the season. The Packers had 414 yards of offense in week 1, 29 points with a missed field goal.
Yeah.
So the first month, this defense did not look like an elite Vic Fangio style defense.
Yeah, I think everything clicked, and I don't want to say it's because Cooper DeJean was put in the slot, but I do think that kind of shored up the one hole in the secondary, because the first month, I thought Quinyon Mitchell was exceptional. Darius Slay was having a bounce-back year. And then, I don't know, I think everybody's roles were just, they owned, I think Vic Fangio, too, was sometimes trying to force the issue and, like, force Bryce Huff to be a 3-down, like, run-stopping edge, and that's not who he was. And he finally embraced Nolan Smith being that guy, and Nolan Smith's had a breakout year, 6.5 sacks in his second year. Overall, I just think, like, the personnel and the scheme finally fit together, whereas, like, last year, that just was not the case at all. So it just feels like it was unified between Howie Roseman's plan, Vic Fangio's plan. At times in years past, it just felt like the head coach has a plan, the defensive coordinator has a plan, the GM has a plan, and none of them were in sync. So month, but again, it was a brand new, not easy scheme to figure out, and it's the youngest defense in the league when it comes to average age of your starters. So I just think it was just some patience, took time, and the personnel fit the role finally. And I think Cooper DeJean being put in the slot, I think really did kind of help that take off. So again, that's like the big matchup from that first game. That's the difference in this game. And I will say as well, like, they're tackling a lot better. They're so much more physical. They were not tackling well in that first Green Bay game at all. And they just have an attitude they haven't had in years past. So it is incredible how you go from the 26th overall defense last year to number 1 this year. I mean, the Vic deserves so much credit.
Well, the Packers, I think they were 28th by DVOA last year, and
you
know, whatever they are this year, exactly.
Yeah, 2 new coordinators have completely turned these teams around.
It really is a miracle what a defensive coordinator can do for you. It's also interesting too, and I want to talk about this after the break about how much you think this Philly team is going to be willing to change some of the things that they're doing based on what has worked against Green Bay in the past. I thought it was really interesting. Matt LaFleur said on Wednesday, you know, they kind of just are who they are. Like, they're a game plan dependent defense, but they're not going to change much about what they want to do. So I want to talk to you about how much you think they are willing to change, given some of the success we've seen some teams have doing some different things than what Philly does.
We'll get into that coming up next. Keys to victory as well. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers. This episode of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app, they give you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Take the over, perhaps, on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith's receiving yards. The anytime touchdown for Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, that always comes through as well. Maybe you're banking on Josh Jacobs and Jayden Reed to have the same success they did week 1 in Brazil against the Birds. Put your money where your mouth is at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're wrapping up this playoff special edition of Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles and Locked On Packers. Louis DiBiase alongside Peter Bukowski. Eagles-Packers this Sunday at 4:30. Cannot match up. And Peter, you were mentioning at the end of segment 2 that you think for Green Bay, so you think Philadelphia needs to change what they normally do.
It's not that I think they need to. I'm wondering if they would be willing to, because what we saw Minnesota do is, and they're the heaviest zone coverage team in the NFL this year, Minnesota. They played man on, like, I think in the first half, like 60% of dropbacks. And I know that Philadelphia is not a true man coverage team. The Vic Fangio defense can often feel like man coverage. It can kind of look like man coverage at times because of the man match nature of what they're trying to accomplish. But they're not a true man coverage team. They play man coverage, kind of a mid I think 15th was the way Field Vision interpreted it. Depends on how you want to define some of these things. But so I do wonder, like, I look at Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay and Cooper DeJean and go, if they want to, they probably can play more man coverage against Green Bay than they've seen, or than the Packers have seen on tape. And I just want to hear from you if you think that's something that they might be willing to do, or if they're just like, hey, we think we're good enough doing the things that we do that we don't have to adjust to what the Packers do or what teams have done against the Packers. We feel like we can get stops doing what we do.
So I do feel like Vic Fangio is going to start off doing what he does. And the way the defense has had success, I don't think he's going to want to totally change up what they've done all year early on. But if Green Bay is having success, I saw a stat today, something to do with the Packers' success with the deep ball and how a lot of that has come from Jordan Love, 5-7 step dropbacks. It's not off the rip. And so for that, of course, you have to win with your pass rush quick, and especially if you're playing zone coverage, you can get hurt in that way. So I do think if they're having success, with the vertical game, if Jordan Love looks like the guy from last year's playoffs against the Cowboys and 49ers, Fangio has been really, and it was something I was nervous about when he was hired, is, okay, how is he with in-game adjustments? I do think he has adjusted quickly this year, especially at halftime. He has been such a good post halftime adjuster. So if that is the case, I don't predict they're going to play man coverage from the jump. But if Jordan Love looks like the hot Jordan Love that we've seen in years past, then I think they will adjust, because like you said, they have the personnel. And that's what bothers me sometimes is I understand that zone coverage is going to be used primarily in the NFL, but when you've got the guys and you have a Quinyon Mitchell playing 15 yards, 10 yards off the ball and just giving receivers space, it bothers me personally.
You're preaching to the choir on that.
I'm a man coverage really guy, though. I played corner growing up too, so it's just my personal preference, but I do think eventually they would adjust, but I don't think that's how they would start off the game.
Yeah, again, I'm not suggesting they need to change what they do. It's just something that I think, especially without Christian Watson, who has been the man coverage killer for the Packers this season, is that something that they might be a little bit, or maybe just hey, we're going to press this team more often. Matt LaFleur talks about that the Packers receivers are going to have to be ready to have a physical day, both at the line of scrimmage and at the top of route stems. And just say, look, we're going to have to play through the contact, because the contact is not going to get called. It's a playoff game. We don't expect the referees to give any help. In fact, he even joked, he felt like every time he mentioned before a game to an official, hey, this defense, they grab a lot, keep an eye on that. He's like, every time I've done that, I feel like we've gotten called on it. And so it's just sort of I don't even want to do that. And I thought that was amusing. I think if you watch the Vikings game, they were very, very, very physical. In basketball, when a team presses,
right?
Usually teams that press get away with a lot of physicality, and they force the officials to say, we're either going to call this every time or never.
Yeah. And in the playoffs, I think you can get away with that even more.
Exactly right. And so that's why if I'm the Packers, I want to see more cover two from them. They're already a heavy cover two team. Press those guys at the line of scrimmage, try and throw off the timing. But I want to hear from you from an Eagles standpoint.
Yep.
Can Philadelphia, think of that week 1 game. If it's just the Saquon show, can they win this game just with Saquon Barkley, or are they going to need Jayden to make the 3 or 4 plays that he made in week 1 to get this game?
I talked to Gino about this exact topic on the show on Tuesday. And again, Saquon Barkley in the offensive line, it's been historically good this year. So I don't want to say no, they can't win if Saquon has the kind of performance he did against Washington or the Rams or pretty much every game this year. But I do think it's not going to be a blowout, and it's going to be close in the fourth quarter. And there's going to be times where Jalen Hurts does have to make the play. Yeah, 100%. And the good thing is, although Jalen hasn't been the MVP favorite he was in 2022, or heck, even the first half of 2023, he was carrying that offense with a high volume passing game, throwing 30 plus times. At the same time, there's been key areas he's been very good at this year. It's been on 3rd and 4th down, got to have it situations. He's been very good in the fourth quarter, and he's taken care of the football since that first month. So those are 3 very important things for the playoffs that I trust. If they got to lean on him and he's got to be the Batman late, I do think he can do it. But again, they're going to want Saquon Barkley to lead them to a win in this one. So I don't think suddenly, don't expect to see what the game plan has been, the previous 2 years before this.
I looked to try and find a place where this Eagles defense is vulnerable, because I truly believe this game comes down to, can the Packers offense score enough points?
Sure.
And
what Jordan Love are you going to get is a great question for this one.
Well, and what is Matt LaFleur going to ask of Jordan Love? If you go back and you watch that first week, he let Jordan Love just go out there and try and cook. And it worked. right? And they got a great run game performance. They averaged almost 8 yards a carry.
Yeah, Jacobs had a great second half, especially.
Josh Jacobs was really good. Emmanuel Wilson was really good. They got an explosive from Jayden Reed, a 30-yard run. We haven't seen them use Jayden Reed as a runner that much, except on 4th and 2 against the Bears on a jet sweep that I hated last week. But for this team, the one place that the Philly defense is not like awesome, it's in that intermediate part of the field, that 10 to 19 band. And it's not like they're bad. They're middling. They're like 16th in EPA per dropback against those throws. Here's the problem, Lou. That's the worst part of the Packers offense. So like, this is the issue. And I think this is the key, because a couple weeks ago, Tom Brady said something that I thought was so damning about this team. He said their intermediate passing game lacks detail. And I just thought that's tough. Like that sucks. But we've seen the intermediate passing game be a real boon for the Packers at times, going back to last year and going back to parts of Matt LaFleur's tenure. That's the thing to me, is can they take advantage of that intermediate space behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties in a 2-deep coverage? Can they get Jayden Reed? Can they sneak him in there? Can they get Tucker Kraft in behind? They got an explosive play on play action. It's a little mini Y leak off play action from the gun. They sneak Tucker Kraft across the line of scrimmage. The linebackers suck up on a run fake, and you get Kraft in behind. Can you get a couple of those? And to me, that can be the difference to scoring enough points versus not scoring enough points.
Yeah, and I think for the Eagles, again, you were looking at like, where's the weakness in this defense? I think overall, personnel-wise, like the Packers have a very good roster on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
For the Eagles, though, I think the key is just going to be and it sounds cliche, but don't shoot yourself in the foot. I think that first game, again, you cannot, especially in the playoffs. The
Packers did the same thing. Both teams tried to give the game away.
Exactly. Jalen Hurts cannot be on his own 3-yard line throwing the football over the middle with 2 defensive backs surrounding AJ. He can't throw it into triple coverage. So it's been something he has worked very hard at stopping since the bye week, and he's been very good at that. His turnover-worthy plays is down substantially compared to the month of September. So you cannot and Green Bay is a very good defense when it comes to turning the football over. Xavier McKinney, led the league in interceptions this year. So I think that's a key, and they have to start faster. That's one thing that the first quarter, it's crazy that this bit continued all year, where quarters 2 through 4, statistically, like they're the best offense in football. In the first quarter, they are 32nd. So I think those are 2 keys for the Eagles. Don't turn the football over, and they got to start fast. I think getting A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith the ball early really helped them kickstart things against Pittsburgh. And I think tempo really worked too. I think sometimes this team comes out lackadaisical in the first quarter, and Green Bay, I remember watching those 2 playoff games last year. They jumped on those teams fast. So you cannot afford to be sleepwalking through the first quarter and say, hey, we're the Eagles, we're more talented than anybody, like we can do this. Like I really hope that is not the case again, because that was a theme all year.
You sound like me, because that has been an issue for the Packers at various points this year, coming out slow, especially in big games. Like you think about the Lions game, they explode in the second half. The Vikings, both times, they explode in the second half. They have to come out fast in this game. Now, if it's 0-0 after the first quarter, like I think both of these teams are going to count that as a win. I really do. Yeah. And so, I mean, I feel like, I was joking with Lauren Cox last week for the Packers Bears game. I was like, bet the first half under on the Packers, like whatever it is, just bet the under. And I feel like, okay, in this game, I'm gonna look at that first quarter under on FanDuel, like whatever the first quarter total is. I'm taking the under on that, and then we'll figure out how to go from there. I don't have a great feel for this one. I'll be honest. With the injuries of Jordan Love, Evan Williams coming back, Quay Walker, if those guys come back, like if we get the injury report on Friday, it sounds like the Eagles are going to have 22 of 22 preferred starters. Like that sucks from a Packers perspective, because they're not going to have Jair Alexander. They're not going to have Christian Watson.
Yep.
But I do think the Packers showed in week 1 a lot that is translatable for them. And I think they can win this game even without those guys, assuming Jordan Love is okay, and especially getting Quay Walker and Evan Williams, because you have to stop Saquon Barkley. You have to stop defend in the middle of the field. And that's going to be so crucial for what both these teams want to do.
Yeah, and again, I respect the Packers. I think it was a tough draw for the Eagles in the first round. I think it's going to be a close game. This is not 2022 where you're going to blow Daniel Jones and the Giants out of the water. I think it'll be a close game. I think the Eagles will win it late in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I mean, the NFC, Peter, is a much better conference this year, I feel like, from top to bottom than years past. So this is going to be a good one for sure.
I agree. Luke Braun said to me a week or two ago, even after the Packers kind of peed down their leg against the Vikings, he said he thinks that the only teams that will beat NFC North teams in the playoffs are NFC North teams. The last time I checked, the Philadelphia Eagles do not play in the NFC North. So yeah, I will take the Packers late. And in the first game, the Packers, they kick a field goal in the low red zone when they probably should have gone for it. And Braden Narvison missed the field goal. Brandon McManus is not Braden Narvison. And I think the kicking game could end up being huge for the Packers in this one. So I think this has got like 31-34 kind of written all over it to me. But
the country will take that. They'd love that.
Listen, Fox would take it. Everyone would take it. And I was kind of going back and forth all week as to who I think was going to win it. But look, you pick the Eagles. I'll pick the Packers. Let's do it. And we'll break it all down after the game. It's going to be a great time. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to do it. And we don't get to say let's do this again, but next year let's run it back no matter what.
We definitely will. Thanks everybody for making Locked On Eagles, Locked On Packers your first listen and watch each and every day. Both got another show for you, getting you ready for Eagles Packers Sunday at 4:30. Until then, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your day.